Hey, thanks for joining us here on 9 News Plus. I'm 9 News meteorologist Chris Bianchi. So you may have seen, if not, I'll explain that Denver had its coldest winter, December through February. I'll explain that here in just a second too, since 2010. In fact, it was tied for our 15th coldest winter on record for us here into the Denver area, which I think is a fairly impressive number. I was looking at numbers throughout the metro area. Boulder, that stat holds up as well. In fact, for our friends in Boulder, it was our coldest winter since 2007. In Fort Collins, it was likely the same. Don't have the exact data, but Castle Rock, coldest winter since 2007. As you get onto the Eastern Plains, Akron, Lyman, both of your coldest winters since at least the early 1990s. Depends on the exact location of those, but it was likely the coldest winter in both those places since the early 1990s. Fort Morgan, same idea there as well. So it was a very cold winter. And before I kind of get into the explainer of this as to why it was so cold, it's also worth pointing out the fact that meteorologists define seasons by full months as opposed to astronomical methods. So, December the 18th, December the 19th, or whatever through March the 21st. Reason being is that those dates change a little bit per year, right? The winter solstice can be December the 22nd or December the 23rd. So for climatological exact record keeping, winter is defined by meteorologists as full months. So again, December, all of January, all of February, which means that today, March the 1st, is the start of meteorological spring. Again, for consistency in record keeping. So, with that said, let's take a look at what our average winter temperature, again, defined by meteorologists here, in Denver was 28.4. That was our coldest winter since 2010. This is based on statistics from the Denver International Airport, and that is the official climate site here in Denver. But again, this is a stat that holds true. This is not just an anomaly at the airport. This was the case across all of northeastern Colorado. In fact, most of the state, I bet, will end up seeing once all that data comes in, it's going to take a little while to get there, but it'll very likely end up being our coldest winter across the state in several years, and for Denver specifically, coldest winter since 2010, tied for 15th coldest winter on record, and those records date back a little over 150 years, the 1870s. So that's pretty impressive, isn't it? And then it was also pretty snowy as well. Winter snowfall for us in Denver was about 10 inches above the average for, again, the full months of December, January, and February combined. We had about 31 inches worth of snowfall. Normally we get about 21 inches over that time span. So the whole reason I'm doing this, and I'm blabbing right now, is that we want to explain why this happens. Now, this was the overall pattern. If you're joining me from the East Coast, or you know a lot of people on the East Coast, you know it was the total opposite. New York City, second warmest winter on record. Washington, D.C., 0 measurable snowfall this winter. I mean, just a stunningly scorching winter. It was basically October the 200th out there across the East Coast all winter long, and that's because of what you're looking at here. This was our jet stream pattern throughout the course of the winter months. We had a persistent trough on the West Coast, area low pressure, cold temperatures, and that kept us on the chillier side of average, and also kept us on the more active side of average as well. So we get a dip of a trough in low pressure. What that tends to do is it draws down colder air from the Arctic. It means we're getting these kind of frequent Arctic outbreaks. Like you might remember that horrific one we had back in late December where we dropped down to minus 25 in Denver. Again, what this sort of jet stream pattern does is allows that cold air to kind of spill on down. Meantime, the reverse was the case for the eastern coast of the United States. We were getting tropical air at times. We had thunderstorms in Albany, New York last week. I mean, we've had wild weather out on the East Coast, and this was the jet stream pattern basically all winter long. And that is what not only led to a lot of cold temperatures for us and a lot of snow for us here along the Front Range, but in terms of that snowpack for us here into the mountains, it is certainly doing really, really well. This is good news, I would say, because we certainly needed the snow for us here into the higher terrain. In fact, for us here into the high country, we're at about 123% of our season to date average snowpack. In fact, we're almost at where we would normally be for a full season's worth of snowfall already. So we've had a very good start to our snow season. One exception being southeast Colorado, the Arkansas River Basin in particular, even parts of the Rio Grande. We could use a good couple of storms out there, and we may get some next week. But we are lagging a little bit there in southeastern Colorado. But for the most part, again, the mountain's doing really, really well so far this season. As usual, there are some holes within some of this. Not every mountain basin, even in some of those basins that are doing well above average, every exact mountain has had an above average snow season. We're in Colorado. It's a big state, a lot of mountains, obviously, and not every mountain works the same. But generally speaking, we've had a great snow season. Now, in terms of what it might look like for March, this is the official Climate Prediction Center's outlook for the month of March. I showed this also earlier on this week in late February. The Climate Prediction Center says we have about equal chances of getting above or below average precipitation. I'll be honest about that. I would disagree with that. I think we have above average chances of seeing an above average precipitation for us, and also colder temperatures throughout the month of March. Computer models are pretty consistent that it is going to be a pretty chilly week next week and the week after. So point being, that 7-day forecast, here's what it looks like over the next few days. Keep in mind, we're normally in the upper 40s for the beginning of March. So we may get there Sunday and Monday, but for the most part, we're going to be talking about below average temperatures for today, for March 1st, and throughout much of the next few days. And also, it does look like we're going to get some snow into the picture for Friday night and Saturday morning, and also for Tuesday night and Wednesday morning as well. So overall, kind of going back to this, it was a very, very cold winter. Reason being, we had this persistent trough of low pressure. The jet stream was very consistently with this big dip across the western third of the United States, and that meant that we got these frequent incursions of Arctic air. It also meant that we had a lot more moisture than usual, a lot of Pacific moisture. A lot of you might know that in California and the West Coast, just dealing with tons and tons and tons of snow and cold temperatures out there. We had snowflakes into the San Francisco Bay Area, into Sacramento just last week. And in fact, right now, Tucson, Arizona is getting a little bit of light snow. I'm not kidding about that. Again, that pattern, what it does is it draws down all this Arctic air. It also brings in moisture from the Pacific. So that's why it's been so cold and so snowy out here across the western third of the United States. But it's also worth noting that on the East Coast, it was, I think the analogy of October the 250th is exactly right, because it has been just so warm out there on the East Coast. I'm from the New York area originally, and they just had, in a lot of cases, their first meaningful snow of the season yesterday. So while it was really, really cold out here and snowy, it was really, really warm. New York City, second warmest winter on record. DC, 0 snow. New York City's had, I think, 2 or 3 inches of snow officially so far this season. They average normally 20, 25 inches. It's been a very, very opposite situation for friends out east. I think Cleveland, Ohio has only had a few inches of snow so far this winter as well. So point being, we've had a lot of cold and a lot of snow out here. East Coast, very different situation. And also looking ahead to March, it looks like we're going to keep this pattern overall for the next couple weeks. There's always some generalization. Sometimes you can get temperatures up into the 50s and 60s. We got up into the 60s just last weekend for a couple of days here in Denver. That it's a general pattern. But when we have the jet stream in the way it is like that, with that big bowl over the western third of the United States, that means we're probably going to be getting more cold and more snow over the next couple of weeks. So hopefully that explains why it was so cold here and also so snowy, putting it into perspective, and also what it might look like as we head through the rest of March. So hopefully that explains it for you. Thanks for joining us here on 90s Plus for that explainer about why this winter was so cold and so snowy.